Welcome to the College Basketball Bracket Science YouTube channel and podcast network. It is Monday, February 16th, about 10:30 here on the East Coast, and we have just concluded a busy weekend of college basketball. In today's show, we're going to talk some bubble watch. So this previous weekend, the big results to me, there were obviously some in the top four seeds, the protected seeds, which we'll talk about here in a second, but the bubble is getting very, very close. So I wanted to do a deep dive into the bubble. We'll talk about some of the numbers behind it, some teams that are in, some teams that are out, some teams just, maybe trying with a path to get into the tournament. And then we will also talk about our projected top four seeds. Why is this important? Because on Saturday, the selection committee will come out with their top four seeds as it stands right now. So before, next week, before that committee comes out, I'll obviously come out with a projection, which you can find on our Instagram, which will be at Bracket Science with 2 S's. I'm sure we'll talk about it on here as well. So we're going to talk about those two things, the bubble watch, projected top four seeds. So in order it's going to go, we are going to talk about the results because that's what influenced these bubble watch and the projected top four seeds. We'll talk about where it maybe led them in terms of on the right side or on the wrong side of both of these different graphics that we'll talk about. And then I believe we'll talk about the top four seeds first, and then we'll dive into the bubble watch before previewing this upcoming week of college basketball. This next week, right now, it's Monday, like we said, until next Monday, like this week is the best week all season that we will see at least in the regular season. Obviously March Madness, a different story, but it is absolutely stacked. We'll talk about some of the games. We have a huge one tonight on Monday. We have a huge one tomorrow on Tuesday. So we'll talk about all those games. So be sure to, like we said, follow us on Instagram, like the video, helps us out, subscribe to the show, turn on the post notifications on Friday. So we're going to have an episode on Thursday. It's just going to be a review and preview, basically. So we'll review what happened this week, as like we said, busiest week we're going to have, and then previewing this weekend we're going to have AP probably number 1 versus number 3 and 2 versus 4 is what I'm thinking. So we're going to preview those games as well. And then on Friday, we're going to have a live bracketology show. So be sure to come back for that. I want to make it like a Q&A sort of thing, answer your questions, your concerns as well. Talk about potential paths to get to the NCAA tournament, talks about, potential paths to get a 1 seed, stuff like that. We get a bunch of questions on comments in YouTube, which is great. We appreciate it. But I would like to talk about those in a sort of Q&A bracketology sort of thing. So live show, that's going to be 5:30 Eastern time on Friday on the East Coast. So be sure to come back for that. Now, before diving into it, we rarely have to do this throughout the season. Sometimes we do, but we do have some news to get to. We have a couple things, starting with Jerome Tang was fired from Kansas State. They're supposedly trying to fire him for cause, maybe because of his comments in the post game, which to me is ridiculous. And all these news we're going to talk about is kind of sad news for me, at least personally. I've talked about it for a while. I really like Jerome Tang as a person. He seems like, I've kind of phrased it, at least in the preseason, I know it's been ugly and there's room for change. I get it. One of those guys where if I had to pick a coach to just go grab a drink with, it'd probably be Jerome Tang. Just seems like a really nice, really fun, good guy. The video went viral of him singing Baby back in, that Elite 8 team with Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson. They needed a change. There's an $18 million buyout. If they were to move into next season and then fire him after next season, it would have been $12 million. I know it's crazy amount of money, but it's kind of you might as well just do it now. However, trying to fire him for cause and not pay that $18 million just seems completely wrong to me. He has no reason to be fired for cause. I know look at Mick Cronin, for example. I'm not saying Mick Cronin is should get fired. I don't think anything like that, but he has some crazy, post-game press conference sort of stuff. Jerome Tang just says it to kind of try and fire up his team, as you might as well. It's embarrassment. We're trying to motivate his team. Now they're saying that's the reason where you're not going to pay him $18 million. That's ridiculous. He's a good guy. He deserves that $18 million. Not $18 million is crazy. That would be a dream to be worthy of getting $18 million, but it's just, he shouldn't be fired for cause, in my opinion. The other news around the country, BYU's Richie Saunders is out for the season with a torn ACL. This will end his college career, unfortunately. Richie Saunders was awesome. He was so fun to watch this season. BYU has definitely been spiraling, but Richie Saunders was climbing up draft boards. It sucks to see him go down this way with a team that, has the potential to maybe I know they're not playing well, but maybe make a deep run in March Madness. Sad to see Richie Saunders go down. One of my favorite players in college basketball, tremendous shooter, kind of just the veteran leader of that BYU team. Then the other one we will talk about just briefly, Auburn's Keyshawn Hall, who's a potential SEC player. They probably not anymore because Auburn hasn't been playing well. The team's just not good enough for him to be SEC player of the year, but probably first team all SEC. He's out indefinitely for disciplinary reasons. That's strange stuff for, it must be pretty extreme if a first-year head coach is, suspending your player who has a chance of being the SEC Player of the Year if they were to win a bunch of games in a row, or even be a first team All SEC guy. If you're suspending him, it couldn't have been good. It hasn't come out like the reason why yet, but weird stuff there for Auburn. All right, let's move on and talk about what just happened this week. And I'm going to try and get through these somewhat quick, although this is like we had to use our big unpretty graphic to post because there were just so many results. We're also going to talk about a couple mid-majors that affected some things. So the big one was number 16, Texas Tech winning at number 1, Arizona, 78-75. In overtime, Arizona suffers their second straight loss, this one at home. Texas Tech can beat anybody in the country. Texas Tech has now beat Duke, Arizona, and Houston. Those are 3 of your top 5 teams in when we talk about our bracketology. JT Toppin was awesome, 31 points, 13 rebounds. Christian Anderson had 19 points, 8 assists, made 6 threes. Christian Anderson, I know JT Toppin is like awesome. He's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. To score 31 points and 13 rebounds against, you got Mo Krivas, you got Toby Owaka. Now, the big news for Arizona was Koa Pete did not play in the second half. So he didn't have to go against Koa Pete in the second half, but it's Krivas and, Owaka, who are your rim protectors. Scoring 31 and 13 against them is unbelievable. But Christian Anderson, man, I think he's just the difference maker where if he's, you know what JT Toppin's going to give you. If Christian Anderson's knocking down shots, you can't guard him. I think he is probably the second best shooter in the country behind Milan Momcilovic, who we'll talk about here in a second. So if you get those two, it's the best 1-2 punch in the country. It's not even close, in my opinion. This is by far your 2 best. They are both at worst second-team All-Americans. Both have been fantastic. Texas Tech, Grant McCasland, doing a fantastic job to climb up our bracketology. We'll talk about him here in a little bit. Like we said, Koa Pete did not play for Arizona in the second half. Arizona didn't shoot it well from the field. I'm honestly not worried at all about Arizona. I still think they're great. I'll talk about them in our bracketology a little later. They're still a 1 seed. Texas Tech climbing up. Iowa State drills Kansas 74-56. Hilton Magic. Milan Momcilovic is the best shooter in the country, shooting over 50% from 3 on the season. He had 18 points to lead him, 4-9 from 3. To me, it was the defense for Iowa State. It just showed up. And I mean, just watching this game, it's like Kansas can't get anything. It's not even like it's all Kansas's fault. It's like this Iowa State defense is just, oh my God. When it's on, it is on. They were just on top of them like crazy. Darren Peterson did not play well. 10 points, only 3 of 10 from field. 0 rebounds. That should say 0 assists. Sorry, I know it says points. 0 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks. Did not have an impact on this game. Did not play a lot in the second half. Bill Self said it was just, hey, he's coming back from the flu or whatever. So giving him a breather, but he didn't fit into the game flow of this game. And Iowa State's defense, my goodness, Tamin Lipsey just on the ball. Josh Jefferson is awesome. Iowa State is a national championship threat. I don't know who needs to hear that, but this team is that good. They have one of the best it's all matchup dependent in March Madness, we'll talk about Michigan here in a little bit, but if you're to go up against Michigan, it's just like a bad draw. If you don't have to go up against Michigan, this Iowa State team can beat just about anyone with, the big 3 of Lipsey, Momcilovic, and Josh Jefferson. And Killian Torrey is awesome as well. Nate Heisey's been playing a lot better as of late. Buchanan, the transfer from Virginia, is like a long athletic center. This team is awesome. This team could win the national championship. I'm that high on Iowa State. This team's really good. Let's keep it moving. Where Florida took down Kentucky 92-83. Left impressed with both teams. Xavier Lee was really good in this one. Had 22 points, 4 of 7 from 3. Maybe his most impactful game for Florida in this one, at least in a big spot, on ESPN ranked on ranked matchup. I left impressed with Kentucky too. They're playing a lot better. I did bet Florida minus 12.5 in this game. I just thought Florida was going to just kill them. They've been playing so well. Kentucky got down big early, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of saw it's coming, but they're scrappy. They fight back. I know it's crazy to say about a $22 million roster. They're not the most talented team in the country, not near that, but they're gritty, and they are, they might, you never know what's going to happen with Kentucky in March. I've said this is the team that I refuse to bet on, and I bet Florida in this game, so went against my will, did not win. Kentucky could beat a couple teams in March Madness. They could lose by 20 in the first round of March Madness, in my opinion. I would lean more of they're in a competitive game in the round of 32. We'll see if they get to the Sweet 16 kind of team. They're probably a 7 seed right now. Florida solidified as a 3 seed. Kansas, by the way, 3 seed. Iowa State solidified as a 2 seed right now. Moving on, we'll try and go through these ones a little bit quicker. Number 20 Duke at number 4, number 20 Clemson at number 4 Duke. Duke took them down 67-54. Could have been a bad beat either way, depending on if you had Duke minus 12.5 or Duke minus 13.5. Duke, Cam Boozer was awesome in this one, 18 points, 8 rebounds. Number 15, Virginia took on Ohio State in a non-conference game in Nashville. Virginia got the job done 70-66. This was Ohio State's opportunity, and they did not take advantage of it whatsoever. Ohio State's on the outside looking in. Ohio State has one quad one win this season. Excuse me. They actually lost this quad one game. They did have one quad one game going into this game. It is now gone because that quad one game was at Northwestern, who is a very bottom team in the Big Ten. Should not be a quad one game. Ohio State now 0-8 in quad one. This seemed like a spot where Virginia hasn't been playing too well lately. They've been kind of scraping by a couple games. They were well coached. Ohio State needed this game. They didn't have John Mobley in this game. Quite frankly, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. They didn't have John Mobley in this game, and Bruce Thornton gave them a fantastic game, 28 points. They still didn't win the game. This Ohio State team does not deserve to be in the NCAA tournament, in my opinion, unless they start rallying off some quad one wins. Number 12, Gonzaga did win at Santa Clara. Speaking of games that you needed and just couldn't get it, Santa Clara got them at home. This would have pushed Santa Clara, obviously as the automatic qualifier and being in first place if they'd have won this game. So Gonzaga now in first place by a game over Santa Clara and St. Mary's. But if Santa Clara would have got it, they'd have been looking great for an at-large as well. But Gonzaga goes and gets the job done. Graham Ike had 21 points, 15 rebounds in this one, playing like a legitimate All-American. Number 13, Purdue won at Iowa 78-57. Wake-up call for Iowa. I don't know if there's a team that had a better week than Purdue. They won at Nebraska, at Iowa, 2 quad 1A wins. Purdue climbing up. They're up to a 2 seed right now. We'll talk about them here in a little bit. Iowa's still in the tournament, but this team, it's kind of a wake-up call, in my opinion, for Ben McCollum, who is like, he's just never been in a situation where he hasn't won like 90% of his games. You know what I mean? He's won everywhere he's gone. It's a little bit of a wake-up call that he's got to get some Big Ten talent coming in around Bennett Sturts. Bennett Sturts is obviously awesome, but outside of that, just not a Big Ten real talented roster. They're still in the tournament, like I said, probably like an 8 or 9 seed. Really, really well-coached team, but when you're going up against the top dogs like this, the Purdue's, the Michigan State, stuff like that, they're going to need some more contributions from someone outside of Bennett Sturts. Number 24, Louisville beat Baylor. This was also in a non-conference game. This game was played in Fort Worth, but not at Baylor. But Louisville gets the job done 82-71. Baylor's pretty much dead. Michael Brown Jr. is on a tear. He had 29 points, was 4 of 5 from 3 in this one, following up that 45-point game where he knocked down 10 threes. He's playing like as good as anyone in the country, as is Darius Acuff Jr., who led Arkansas to a win over Auburn, like we said, without Keyshawn Hall. Darius Acuff had 31 points and 7 assists, 7 of 10 from 3. I think it's starting to really cut down in the SEC Player of the Year race between him and probably Tommy Hauck from Florida. I think your favorite, I haven't seen like any betting odds or anything. I would think it's Darius Acuff, although if you want to pick best player on best team, I'm not going to go against that, but Darius Acuff is on a tear. Without Keyshawn Hall, Tahad Pettiford was really good, 29 points, 7 assists, 4 of 7 from 3. Auburn is now 5-7 in the SEC. Now, I wouldn't panic yet, Auburn fans, because we get a couple of these every single year. Last year, it was Oklahoma, who went 6-12 in the SEC. Now, the SEC was obviously much better last year, but Auburn played such a tough non-conference schedule. Like, Auburn is still, where are they? They're 33rd at KenPom. Like, this isn't, they're bubble-ish, but they're not like in danger right now, in my opinion. I would have them as a 9 seed. I don't think they're quite on the outside. They're 14-11, but they do have big wins. They're 5-7 in the SEC, which isn't great, but you know what's good for them? The conference record does not go on the team sheet. Now, they have lost 4 in a row. So are they in danger? Maybe a little bit. However, all 4 of those games are against top 20 teams. They have an away win at Auburn. That's going to carry them. They beat Arkansas. They beat NC State. They beat St. John's. To me, this team has enough wins that they're completely fine, even though, we're going to get a couple of those teams, 1 or 2 of those teams every year where it's like, this team is, 19-15 or 18-14 or something, and they're an 8 or 9 seed. I think that's going to be Auburn this season. Actually, let's talk about the next one. Texas A&M and number 19 Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt gave it to them 82-69. I think Vanderbilt is the second best team in the SEC, and this is going to lead into one of my thoughts. These the power conferences at least, are turning out how we expected them to turn out this season after the non-con. So let's just go through them quickly. These are in order of just KenPom's, power ratings in terms of conferences, and then we'll talk about the standings. So Florida in the SEC is 10-2. They have a 1-game lead over Arkansas, and right behind them is Vanderbilt, Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky. just kind of what we would have expected. You can say maybe Kentucky overperformed, but remember Texas A&M was towards the top. Maybe Auburn being down is a little bit surprising, but to me, it's Florida, and then I'll give it a tied for 2 between Vanderbilt and Arkansas. And then right behind them, I would probably have Alabama, Kentucky, and Tennessee. So it's kind of panning out how we thought after the non-conference play. And then in the Big Ten, Michigan as your top team, there's no doubt they're the best team in the country. They have separated. We'll talk about them here in a second, as they're our next game as they took down UCLA 86-56. My goodness, this team is really, really good. It was actually close at the half, but this Michigan team wears you down with their physicality, speed, crashing the offensive glass. Michigan's your best team in the country right now. They will be number 1 in the AP poll when it releases. So let's talk about the Big Ten standings, as Michigan is 14-1. They're up top by far. Up next is Illinois, who actually has a half game lead just in the win column over Purdue and Nebraska. I think Illinois and Purdue are your 2 next best teams after that. And then you got Nebraska, then Michigan State, who's right behind them. To me, those are without a doubt your top 5 teams. Then Wisconsin right behind them, who's kind of been the big surprise, but it's just kind of panning out how we might have thought. Let's move on to our next game, where BYU escaped Colorado without Richie Saunders. Obviously tore his ACL in this game. 90-86. This was a scary one for BYU, but the Big 12 kind of panning out how we might have thought. Now, Arizona's had a tough little stretch. They're in second place right now behind Houston. Houston is in first at 11-1. Arizona 10-2, and then right behind them, it's our, we've talked about this Big 6 for a while. It's Iowa State at 9-3, Kansas at 9-3, Texas Tech at 9-3. BYU is in 6th, tied for 6th with West Virginia, actually. BYU and West Virginia at 7-5. Kind of panning out how we might have thought. Speaking of West Virginia, they won at UCF 74-67. West Virginia, keep an eye on them. They're climbing up a little bit. They're not dead. They're going to be in our bubble watch, so stay tuned for that. UCF, I would have as like the 5th last bye team. So they're not going to be on our bubble watch because we do it by 4s. 4, like our first last bye team, I guess it would be the 4th team in as a bye. I would have UCF as 5th. So be careful if you're UCF. Texas won at Missouri. Missouri also heavily on the bubble, as is Texas. I have Texas as a bye team now. I've had Texas in the first 4 for a while. They've done enough. Their resume is climbing like crazy. Sean Miller's doing a good job. I have them as a bye team. Missouri, very, very, very bubbly. Miami and NC State. Miami won at NC State 77-76. So let's talk about how that influenced the conference rankings. So first place is Duke. They're obviously by far the best team. And then Virginia, who is second, who I would definitely say is your second best team. After that, we probably would have said it's Louisville and North Carolina. They're actually, they're close to being there, but it's actually Clemson behind them at 10-3, who's faded a little bit. They've played, no offense to Clemson, a very easy ACC schedule, as has Miami, Florida, who's 9-3. Miami, Florida has played the easiest ACC schedule. Clemson has played the second easiest ACC schedule, according to KenPom. Miami doesn't have to play Duke. They don't have to take the West Coast swing. They got kind of lucky this season. I have Miami inside the tournament right now. And then behind them, NC State with a half-game lead over Louisville and North Carolina. So if Louisville and North Carolina play another game, they can get in there and be tied for 5th. So these are your top teams, with SMU right behind them, Virginia Tech, Cal, both bubble teams. So it's starting to pan out just exactly how we thought. Speaking of Florida State and Virginia Tech, Florida State went to Virginia Tech and killed them 92-69. Get Virginia Tech out of the tournament. This is the loss that you can't have. You can't lose by 23 points on your home court to Florida State, who's 5-7 in SEC or in ACC play, 12-13 overall, 79th ranked team in the country. This killed Virginia Tech's metrics. They're now 6-7 in the ACC, down to 65th at KenPom. This is a loss you can't have. Get them out of the tournament for now. SMU lost at Syracuse. Not a horrible loss, but Syracuse playing a little better as of late. They're also 6-7 in the ACC. SMU still in the tournament, but be careful. Probably like our 6th last bye team. So be careful. They're kind of in that UCF range. Syracuse, it's kind of sad to see the Carrier Dome be so dead, but they've actually been okay this season. I would be surprised if Red Autry has another season, but we'll see. TCU and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State loses at home 95-92. This is going to boost TCU into our tournament. TCU with one of the most interesting resumes. Talk about them a little more in Bubble Watch. Oklahoma State, not dead, but not in good shape whatsoever. They do have a big one this week where they can pick up a quad 1A win, though. Georgia loses at Oklahoma 78-94. Be careful. If you're Georgia, they're probably like They're right in that UCF conversation. In fact, I think they're actually going to be they're worse off than that. We'll talk about them a little more in the bubble watch, but they're hanging on by a thread. St. John's won at Providence, and this was the game that was, my goodness. Duncan Powell suspended 3 games for throat chopping, trying to rip Bryce Hopkins' head off, basically. It was ugly. It was a pretty ugly scene. However, if you like fights, it was pretty entertaining. St. John's wins the game. Duncan Powell, the more viral thing that went more viral was his haircut, and it is rough. It is rough. Just a little bit of hair straggling down towards his neck and nothing else. Providence fans are obviously aware of this, but the rest of the world was put aware on this one. He's on the main stage with the fight. I don't know. Kim English, said probably the right things. I know he said like, hey, you got the ball, which you kind of got to protect your guy, I guess, a little bit. And Kim English really did try and dissolve the situation, but it's just been nothing good has come to Providence since Kim English has been the coach there. They're looking for a new coach already, is what I've heard. So, St. John's picks up a good win, gets the revenge at Providence. So that moves the Big East standings to UConn, actually a half game ahead of St. John's, 14-1 versus 13-1. Villanova right behind them at 11-3. And then Seton Hall in 4th place at 8-7. So we've kind of talked about those being your top 4 teams in the Big East all season long. That's how it's panning out right now. So it's just kind of weird to see these things actually work out. Like the non-con, you expect some teams to really climb up, like the Floridas last year, who was really good in the non-con. In fact, I don't even know if they lost in the non-con. But the story was Tennessee, it was Alabama, it was even Kentucky, and then Florida just shot to the top and was awesome the rest of the season. I mean, maybe it wasn't surprising to some, but we just haven't seen anything even close to like that. Speaking of Villanova, they won at Creighton, had no problems there. And then moving into the mid-major ranks, Yale won at Harvard. This was a very, very entertaining game. These two teams were tied at the top in the Ivy League at 6-2. Harvard beat them early in the season. Yale needed to have it. They got it done by 1 in overtime. Hawaii out of the Big West lost to Cal State Northridge. Really, really surprising one here, 84-60, bringing the Big West race just to be incredible down the stretch. You got Hawaii, you got UC Irvine, you got UC Santa Barbara, all vying for the regular season title. And the Navy did win at Colgate, your top 2 teams in the Patriot League. This pretty much solidified Navy is going to win your regular season Patriot League title, 84-80 in overtime. I do want to go back because I realized I skipped over it. Back to the BYU game where we talked about Richie Saunders being out. Rob Wright had 39 points in that game. He was 12-16 from the field, 4-4 from 3. AJ Devanza was also great, 20 points, 13 rebounds, 8 assists. They played like this without Richie Saunders and still got taken to overtime by a Colorado team who has gotten drilled on the road pretty much every game the past couple games. So that's a little bit concerning. I did just want to mention that. All right, let's go back to Friday just real quick and talk about the big one where number 10 Michigan State did lose at Wisconsin 92-71. It was complete domination. Nick Boyd, Wisconsin fans love him. San Diego State fans, I don't know if they loved him, but Florida Atlantic fans definitely loved him. 29 points, 5 of 7 from 3. This was domination from start to finish. Wisconsin, now with wins over Michigan State, they have a road win at Illinois, and they have a road win at Michigan. The road win at Michigan is the best win all season. Tremendous win there. And then Miami of Ohio did beat Ohio 90-74 to stay undefeated. That's the only ones that we will really mention on this graphic. Let's move on to Sunday real quick, where the big one was Illinois taking down Indiana 71-51. This was domination. This kept Illinois at a 2 seed. Belmont and Murray State. I want to label this game because I want everyone to know the name Belmont. And this team, they put up 63 points in the second half. They were down double digits at the half to Murray State, and they put up 63 points. I believe they outscored them 63-31 in the second half at Murray State, who's like a very good team. When there's a 12 seed that beats a 5 seed, don't be surprised if it's Belmont. This team's awesome. USF won at FAU in overtime, 83-81. Very entertaining day in the American all around the globe. USF is very much in control of the American right now. And then Seton Hall won at Butler. Seton Hall, I would like to see Seton Hall in the tournament. I think Seton Hall deserves to be in the tournament. Their metrics don't have them there yet, which is like weird. I don't know why their metrics are like weirdly getting worse. I think this team should be in the tournament, but they're not quite there yet. Alrighty, that's everything that happened. It was a busy weekend. We gave a little bit of bracketology talk. So on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about our top 4 seeds. We'll give our up next. So top 5 seeds, I guess, technically, before diving into the bubble watch, and then we will preview the week ahead. We'll see you on the other side. impossible to find affordable golf instruction? Well, not any longer. Introducing Virtual Swing Reviews by PGA certified Brandon Jadich Golf Instruction. Just send a video of your swing to receive feedback to fix your swing in minutes. You don't need a $100 hour-long lesson when the instructor knows how to correct your habits after just one swing. Follow Brandon Jadich Golf Instruction on Instagram with the link below in the description, and send a message saying swing review for just a $10 swing review, or comment under this YouTube video saying swing review. 2026 is a year of saving money and improvement. So start now with this limited time offer to grow your golf game. Alrighty, let's talk some bracketology. Now, this is as of last night, but I don't believe the numbers have changed whatsoever. So these are my 1 seeds right now. It is definitely Michigan as your number 1 overall seed. In fact, let's talk about how dominant Michigan is right now. First in KPI, first in strength of record, first in wins above bubble for an average of 1. Obviously, they're first in KenPom, first in Torvik. They're second in BPI. First PI is actually Duke. It's not Arizona. It is Duke. So Michigan is just they're on a whole different level right now. In terms of KenPom right now, Michigan is in first, Duke is in second. Michigan actually has just about a 3-point lead over Duke in that category. That is bigger than Duke is to the number 6 ranked Illinois. So actually not quite, but almost, you get the point. This Michigan team is worlds above pretty much everyone else. Duke and Arizona right behind them. Houston and Florida are right behind them. So Florida up there as well. So you got Michigan as the number 1 overall seed, Duke as the number 2 overall seed. Still have Arizona as the 3rd number 1 seed. No surprise there. They're 4th in strength of record, 4th in wins above bubble, 3rd at KenPom, 3rd at Torvik. In terms of UConn, UConn's predictives aren't good. They're 9th at KenPom, 9th at Torvik. They're 2nd in strength of record. They're just kind of squeaking by these games. 3rd in wins above bubble. Still have them as the 4th number 1 seed. First, second seed is Houston. Now, I got a really, really good question in our last comments about, there is a, regional where you can go through Houston in the first couple rounds where you can go through Houston. So someone asked hey, well, Michigan would obviously be in the Midwest. Duke would be in the East. Arizona would be in the West. That would force UConn to the South. This would put Houston also in the South because they would get to pick as the first number 2 seed, essentially flipping Houston and UConn. Hopefully that makes sense. It was a tremendous question for those who asked it. I don't believe his name is actually in the username, but it was, I'm sure he listens all the time, comments a lot. It was a really, really good question, and it's a very fair point because Houston, technically, they're 4th at KenPom compared to UConn being 9th at KenPom, so they'd be favored either way. But it's essentially giving Houston the 1 seed, so that's a very interesting thing to kind of think about these these bracketing principles and what would happen. So I honestly don't think it's going to matter by the end because I think Houston's going to end up as a number 1 seed. I think UConn's actually. I think UConn. You're right for this one. I think UConn could win out. I think Houston could lose one more game, and I think Houston could flip with UConn. That's just the difference between the Big 12 and the Big East this season. But we will see. That might also have to do with if UConn were to win the Big East tournament, maybe UConn would get it. But very, very interesting, thought to just because we're so Midwest dominant right now and East Coast dominant with Michigan, Duke, UConn, Houston. Houston's in the South, obviously, but Iowa State, Purdue, Illinois, Kansas, Nebraska, Florida. And then you move on to Texas Tech after that. So it's very East dominant. So the bracketing principles are going to play a major factor in this season. So do have Houston as your first number 2 seed, Iowa State right behind them, Purdue right behind them as a 2 seed. Purdue's got a good resume, 7th in strength of record, 6th in wins above bubble. I'm not sure if they're a national championship threat, but they have a very high floor still. Illinois right behind them still as a 2 seed, really good resume. They are 6th at KenPom, 5th at Torvik, good predictives. First 3 seed is Kansas right behind them. Kansas has racked up quad 1 and quad 2 wins. They are 13-6 inside the first 2 quadrants, which is very good. 7 quad 1 wins, which is good for, I believe, 5th or 6th in the country. Just eyeballing it. And then Nebraska right behind them, really good resume, 6th in strength of record, 7th in wins above bubble. Predictives not quite there, but we know what Nebraska has done this year. They have some of the higher end wins all season long. Florida right behind them. I will be surprised if Florida is here. I think they're going to keep climbing. I believe Florida deserves to be the first 3 seed because I don't think it's fair for a 2 seed to have to play Florida in the Sweet 16. If you're Houston or even Iowa State, I think those two are definitely above Purdue and Illinois in terms of bracketology, in terms of what they've done this season. It wouldn't be fair to match up Houston with Florida, in my opinion, or, however the bracketing principles would lay out Iowa State against Florida, because Florida, to me, is by far the best 3 seed. Now, you can say Texas Tech can beat anyone in the country, but when you look at the predictives, it is by far Florida. Florida is 5th at KenPom, 4th at Torvik, which is worlds above pretty much everyone else. Like Texas Tech is 16th at KenPom, 11th at Torvik. I'm not saying it's a better matchup or whatever, matchups are going to come into play, but to me, it's just not fair. I think Florida will end up at worst as the first number 3 seed. And then Texas Tech right behind them, we've mentioned their wins. They actually jumped up from, now they were our last 4 seed to or maybe our second to last 4 seed to a 3 seed. This team is on a very similar trajectory of last year's team. At first number 4 seed would be Gonzaga, in my opinion. They're 6th in the net. However, nothing incredible in terms of, resume-based metrics, pretty much just a 3 seed across the board, resume and predictive. Vanderbilt right behind them, still, just cruising along. Not a lot of people talking about Vanderbilt. They're 7-3 inside quad 1. They only have 1 quad 1A win, so it hasn't been the most elite quad 1 wins, but they're 13-4 inside the first 2 quadrants. This team's still really good. Michigan State right behind them, starting to fade a little bit. Michigan State has, actually, you know what? They have 2 quad 1A wins now. They actually had 0 just a couple of days ago, so something boosted into quad 1A. They still have a good resume. However, they do only have 10 quad 1 plus quad 2 wins, which isn't very high end compared to the rest of the field, but they're still in good shape as a 4 seed. And then Alabama would be your last number 4 seed. Got a question about Alabama and Virginia, comparing the two. So I'll just kind of compare the two. So Virginia is, they have a resume averages of 15. Alabama has resume averages of 15.3, so barely Virginia. Moving into the predictives, Virginia's is 20.3 average compared to Alabama 18. That gives them a little bit of a boost. Virginia's 5-2 in quad 1. Alabama is 5-6 in quad 1. Virginia is 4-0 in quad 1A compared to Alabama 3-5. So if you're wondering, how does Alabama and Virginia, how are they pretty much the same in resume-based metrics? It's because Virginia's quad 1A games just aren't elite. At Texas, at NC State, at Louisville, which is looking better, and at SMU. So outside of the Louisville game, it's nothing like awesome. Alabama has much better wins, in my opinion, at St. John's. Who else did they beat? I can't even remember. I got it on here, but can't quite. At Auburn. So, I know Auburn's kind of in that same conversation. There's an argument for Virginia over Alabama. Like Virginia has much less losses, but Alabama has better wins. It's really close. I went with Alabama just because the resume-based metrics are pretty much the same, and Alabama has better predictives and pretty much everything you look at with better wins, but it's really close. Virginia is your first 5 seed, then Arkansas right behind them, St. John's right behind them, and then North Carolina rounding out the 5 seeds. Very curious to see what will happen with North Carolina with their injuries. Caleb Wilson out. It's going to be, I believe Henry Vasar also suffered a little bit of something. I haven't heard how extreme it is, but North Carolina and Tennessee kind of in the last battle for that last 5 seed, and we'll see how the committee judges them without having Caleb Wilson in the lineup. Hopefully he is back by tournament time, hopefully even ACC tournament time, because I want to see the best players out there on one of the biggest brands, but would have them as a 5 seed with respect to Tennessee, who's just been hanging on to that first 6 seed for a while. All right, let's move on and talk about our bubble. Here's our bubble graphic that will be posted on our Instagram tonight. Last 4 buys, Texas A&M starting to get close. Texas A&M. So what I will say about this bubble graphic, this was the hardest bubble graphic I've ever had to fill out, because I can't remember a year where the resumes are so different from predictive metrics to resume metrics. For example, Texas A&M has really good predictive metrics. They're 35th at KenPom, 32nd at Torvik, 31st in BPI, 43rd in the net. That's really good for a bubble-ish team. Resume-based metrics are not that good. 44th in strength of record, 45th in wins above bubble, 57th in KPI for an average of 48.7. That's not really good. That's usually Dayton-ish. I think they're just with the couple wins they picked up. They have 3 quad 1A wins, which is really, really good for a bubble team. I think that's keeping them, not out of Dayton for now. Next up, USC is in the complete opposite direction. So, like I said, UCF would probably be my 5th. If we were doing last 5 buys, UCF would probably be ahead of Texas A&M in my opinion. But I just wanted to compare UCF to USC because they have very similar metrics, which are completely different than A&M. A&M, the predictives like them. They think they're pretty good. the resume isn't quite as good as the likes of UCF and USC. So UCF has resume averages of 31, which is really good. That's like not bubblish. Then you look and they're 54.7 in predictives. That's not great. However, they do have 4 quad 1 wins. USC is closer to the bubble because of this. They have an average of 35.3 in resume-based metrics, 34th in strength of record, 32nd in wins above bubble. Usually, resume metrics get you in the tournament, while seeding is influenced by the predictive metrics. So they're 49th at KenPom, 47th at Torvik. So they have better predictive metrics than UCF. However, worse strength of record, worse wins above bubble, and is worse in KPI, and also worse inside the quadrant. So UCF has 4 quad 1 wins. USC only has 2. They're 2-5 in quad 1. They do have a lot of quad 2 wins, but they also have a quad 3 loss, which UCF doesn't have, which is why I have UCF ahead of Texas A&M. But then when you compare like Texas A&M to UCF, it's like all over the place because resume versus predictive metrics. Got USC as your second last 4 bye. I got Texas as a bye team. Their metrics have climbed like crazy. They were like 55 to 60-ish in strength of record and wins above bubble just a couple weeks ago. As they keep winning and just taking care of business, they're now 42nd in both of those, climbing up with pretty good predictives as well, and 5 quad 1 wins. So it's like, how do you measure that against USC? USC, like we said, average resume of 35.3 compared to Texas, an average resume of 45.7. That's a big difference, but all these computers are telling you Texas is better. I think Texas is better. However, USC has done more to this point. I would have them ahead of that. Georgia right behind them. Be careful. Be careful if you're Georgia. Georgia's resume averages are 44.3, so just a hair better than Texas. However, their predictives are a lot worse, so I would have them much further behind. Along with Texas having good wins, Georgia doesn't have very many good wins. They're 0-3 in quad 1A. They have 3 quad 1 wins, 3-6. However, inside the first 3 quadrants, usually I talk about quad 1 plus quad 2 record. We're going to include quad 3, 8-8 inside the first 3 quadrants. Quad 3 games are not good games. They're 0-3 in those games, which was a home loss to Ole Miss. Not great. 8-8 inside the first 3 quadrants, not great. They might be if the last 4 in teams weren't so mediocre, Georgia would be a last 4 in team. If there's any reason for anyone to say, let's expand the tournament to 76 teams, please show them this graphic, because I don't think Georgia belongs in the tournament. I'm just going to say it right now. I don't think UCLA belongs in the tournament. I love to see Santa Clara. I'm not going to hate on Santa Clara just because I like to see these Midwest teams. I don't know if Missouri belongs in the tournament. TCU has a quad 3 and a quad 4 loss. San Diego State has beaten pretty much no one. New Mexico, same deal. Georgia Tech just lost at home to Florida State. Ohio State, 0-8 in quad 1. I don't know if any of these teams deserve to be in the tournament. There's a couple teams I'd like to see in the tournament because I've seen them beat a couple teams, but they've also suffered losses they haven't beaten. Imagine we stretch this out to 76 teams, and no offense, Cal, but Cal's getting in the tournament right now. Ohio State's getting in the tournament right now. I don't like it. I don't think these last 4 in teams are even that great, but I got UCLA inside right now. They're an average of 48.3 in resume-based metrics, which isn't good. They're 6-8 inside the first 2 quadrants, 2-6 in quad 1. They're 61st in KPI, 43rd in strength of record, 41st in wins above bubble. Behind them, Santa Clara. I don't know if Santa Clara would be in terms of the numbers. I would have them in right now. Like I said, this is the hardest bubble I've ever had to put together because Santa Clara doesn't have any real elite wins. They have 1 quad 1 win, which was a St. Mary's game. They're 7-5 inside the first 2 quadrants. However, they have a quad 4 loss. They lost to Loyola Chicago, which you just can't do. Loyola Chicago is awful this year. Got some talent. Let's be honest. It's Loyola Chicago, but still, I would have Santa Clara in just because the resume averages out to 42.7, which is better than the others. However, just no elite wins. And then right behind them, I would have Missouri. Missouri's the one team where it's like, I would like to see them get in the tournament. They have 3 quad 1 wins, 3 quad 2 wins, 2 quad 1A wins. So they've picked up some decent wins. They beat Florida. They won at Kentucky. That's the reason I like to see them in. I know it's like only 1 or 2 games, but compared to what we got, maybe lean that. TCU is another team that I also would like to see in. If you were to just like give me teams who I want to see in, give me Santa Clara just because they're mid-major bias. Give me Missouri, give me TCU. Seton Hall. I would like to see Seton Hall in the tournament, and then probably San Diego State would probably be like my pick for last 4 in. That's kind of just what I'm going for in terms of teams that I think could actually do something in March Madness. Like, no offense, I don't know if I see Santa Clara winning a game in March Madness, although they do have size and they've got athleticism. Um, Maybe UCLA, you can argue, as long as they're playing out west. When they come east, they lose by 30 pretty much every time. So we'll see about them, but it's like just teams that I would like to see get in. I've seen TCU beat Florida. I've seen Missouri beat Florida. I've seen, I don't know about San Diego State. I've seen Seton Hall compete in Maui. I've seen them beat NC State. That's the only reason I would like to see these teams in. So where were we at? I went on a little rant there. TCU as your last team in right now. I think it's good enough. 44th in wins above bubble, 45th in strength of record, 5 quad 1 wins. That's fantastic for a bubble team. But like we said, 1 quad 3 loss, 1 quad 4 loss. The reason I think they get in is because I do think the committee, at least you can argue if they should or shouldn't, the committee would maybe give them a little bit of benefit out of that quad 4 loss was their first game of the season. Maybe they give a little leeway with that. I'm not saying they will. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. But that first game of the season was a home loss to New Orleans. Since then, they've definitely been a tournament team. So we'll see about TCU. They've really boosted their resume. They've shown that they can compete and that they can win on the road. That's another big thing. I have San Diego State as your first team out right now. Still really haven't shown that they can beat the best of the best. Like we said, they're 0-3 inside of quad 1. Quad 1A. They do have 1 quad 1 win. I'm not quite sure which one. It's at Nevada is a quad 1A win. So I don't know about that. 5-1 inside of quad 2. They're only 6-5 inside the first 2 quadrants and have a quad 3 loss. So they're still right there. New Mexico right behind them. These teams are so close. Like Santa Clara through, I'll say Virginia Tech, I think all would have decent chances as of now to being in the tournament. It's so close. I don't think Ohio State has an argument to be in the tournament right now. West Virginia, we'll get there. So New Mexico right behind them. Very, very similar resume to San Diego State. 0 quad 1A wins, just like San Diego State. Both teams are 1-4 inside of quad 1. New Mexico 6-1 in quad 2. San Diego State 5-1. Both teams have 1 quad 3 loss, so it's very, very close. However, not all these games are created equal, and it actually leans San Diego State in strength of record and wins above bubble against New Mexico. Actually has a little bit of a better KPI over San Diego State, but we're starting to see this wins above bubble metric become very, very important. The predictive's pretty much the same. It actually all leads San Diego State, but it's close. So I would have San Diego State, then New Mexico, then Virginia Tech, like I said, suffering that horrible loss. They're 65th at KenPom, like we said, 60th at Torvik. They have shown that they can compete and they can beat some of the teams. However, inside the first 2 quadrants, they're 7-8, which is solid, but not all those games are created equal. They're 53rd in strength of record, 51st in wins above bubble. I think they would be on the outside looking in, especially with poor predictive metrics. Then Ohio State right behind them. We talked about Ohio State enough. 0-8 in quad 1. Not good enough. 5-9 inside the first 2 quadrants. Not good enough, in my opinion. Then West Virginia right behind them. I did actually lean a little bit of the Ohio State over West Virginia on a neutral site game. Now, West Virginia, I think if they were to play Ohio State again right now, might be a little bit of a different story. West Virginia's been playing good. Ross Hodge is a good coach. They've been playing fine, but not quite there. 57th in strength of record, 55th in wins above bubble. However, they do have 4 quad 1 wins with 1 quad 1A win. That's much better than Ohio State. However, not all these games are created equally. Yet again, as I keep saying, 57th in strength of record, 55th in wins above bubble, compared to Ohio State, 47 and 48. It's a big difference with the head-to-head, even without a quad 1 win. Would have Ohio State ahead of them. VCU just kind of hanging on. I don't know if VCU even has a chance of getting in the tournament just because they're going to have so many limited opportunities in the A10. But they're having a solid season in year 1 under Phil Martelli Jr. Seton Hall, like I said, they're just not climbing up, and I don't know why. They're 49th in strength of record, 54th in wins above bubble. They have an resume averages of 51.7 compared to West Virginia 57. The reason I have West Virginia ahead of them is West Virginia has proven they can beat some of the elite teams. West Virginia has 4 quad 1 wins, like we said, compared to Seton Hall only having 1. And I think that's a big difference. Along with West Virginia does not have a quad 3 loss, and Seton Hall has a quad 3 loss. The resume metrics and the predictive metrics might lead Seton Hall, but in terms of getting that last spot in the tournament, who's your last team? Who has done more? Who deserves it? Who deserves to get in? I think it would be West Virginia ahead of Seton Hall right now, quite frankly. I'm not saying I agree with it whatsoever. But like I said, with West Virginia, 1 quad 1A win, 4 quad 1 wins compared to Seton Hall, 0 quad 1A wins, only 1 quad 1 win. Plus add on the quad 3 loss. I think West Virginia has done more to this point in terms of being in consideration. And then Cal right behind them. I don't know if Cal has much of a choice, but needed to get that 8th team in there Resume averages of 52.7. They have 4 quad 1 wins, but they're only 4-8 inside the first 2 quadrants. Not quite there yet, but could be there with some big wins in the ACC tournament and such. Alrighty, so did a lot of talking there about the bubble watch. We talked top seeds. No disrespect to some of the teams like 6 seeds through 9 seeds. They're just kind of the mush right now for me, just because I think we're kind of figuring out where they're going to be. For example, Wisconsin. Maybe Wisconsin could climb up a little bit more. Just off the top of my head, who are some other ones like maybe even NC State. Like I think NC State's probably going to be an 8 or 9 seed. Clemson going to be like a 7 seed. Same goes for Villanova. So we kind of know what those teams are going to be. However, these are fluctuating like crazy. And of course, we got to talk those top protected seeds because that is a big deal come national championship time, come protected seed time. All right, let's move on and talk about the games to watch this week. So the AP poll will release in about 2 hours here. So these numbers are going to be different. Syracuse at Duke to start off big Monday, 7 o'clock. Duke favored by 19.5. That is what Syracuse has become. Would expect Duke to dominate in that one at Cameron. At 9 o'clock, this is the game. So like we said, we have an elite game on Monday. We have an elite game on Tuesday. We have a good slate on Wednesday. Then we'll be back and talk more on Thursday. But I believe it will be number 2, Houston. I think Houston will be number 2 in the country, going to Iowa State, who I believe will probably still be number 5. Maybe they'll be number 4 if Arizona were to drop number 5. I don't think Arizona should drop that far, quite frankly. Iowa State is favored by 2.5 at home in this game. Iowa State has the Big 12 is so backloaded, which we'll talk about on our review and preview episode on Thursday. Because what do we got on Saturday? We got Houston and Arizona on Saturday, and we also have Iowa State and BYU on Saturday. So Iowa State has to play Kansas, Houston, and BYU 3 in a row, 3 teams that we knew were going to be good coming in the season. BYU's been struggling, but still, why would you? I don't know. Weird scheduling by the Big 12. Iowa State's favored by 2.5 at Hilton in that game. Houston just basically refuses to lose on the road. However, they have had troubles with Iowa State. Remember, Iowa State beat them badly a couple seasons ago in the Big 12 championship. This is going to be a fun matchup. This is going to be defense on defense. Over-under is only 134.5 in this game. I cannot wait to watch this game tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. Moving on, let's talk about Tuesday, where it will be number 1 Michigan. Michigan will be your number 1 team. I would expect Purdue to be inside the top 10 as well after, like we said, maybe not a better weekend for any team than Purdue. This game's at 6:30 on the East Coast, which I kind of love. It's on Peacock. Michigan is favored by 2 on the road at Mackey in this one. I think you ready for this one? I think these are still your 2 best teams in the Big Ten. Maybe Illinois. Maybe I would probably go Michigan, Illinois, then Purdue, but Purdue's right there in my opinion. Favored by 2 at Mackey. That's not something you see much. That's how highly Michigan is thought of by KenPom, which is what these lines are based on. So it should be a lot of fun there. 7 o'clock on ESPN, number 11, North Carolina at NC State. It is a rivalry game. NC State is favored by 3 at home in that one. I'm curious to see if that line goes up with the North Carolina injuries or if that line will, favor North Carolina a little bit. Would not expect North Carolina to be ranked number 11 after their loss to Miami. They'll probably be around the 15 spot. 7 o'clock, ESPN 2, another good one. Number 24, Louisville, who should climb a little bit in the AP poll at SMU. Louisville favored by 2 on the road. Will Michael Brown Jr. continue his tear? Michael Brown Jr. versus Boopy Miller. Going to be a really fun matchup there. We'll see. SMU needs some wins. This is the win that would probably not lock you, but put you in really good shape to be in the NCAA tournament. Speaking of 2 teams that, need some wins to be in very good shape or in decent shape, we'll say. 7 o'clock ESPN Plus, very important game for both teams. TCU at UCF. Like we said, UCF very close to being a last 4 bye team. They can't afford any real losses because the predictives aren't good enough to carry them into the tournament. The resume just can't suffer because that's what's keeping them in the tournament right now. TCU, like we said, they're playing some good ball. UCF favored by 3 at home in that one. 7 o'clock ESPN Plus. Here's the one for Miami of Ohio, number 23 in the country at UMass. This is their closest spread game via KenPom right now. This is their toughest game remaining on the schedule. Miami favored by 4 on the road in that one. I hope they get it done. I hope they continue to be undefeated. It's a fun story to follow. 8 o'clock, ACC Network, Virginia Tech at Miami, Florida. Miami, Florida favored by 8 in this one. Virginia Tech, after that bad loss, Miami, Florida's playing some good ball right now. Miami, Florida would be in the tournament. Virginia Tech, I have on the outside looking in. They need a win. Speaking of teams that need a win, Ohio State gets Wisconsin at home. Ohio State's favored by 1. At the shot, 8:30 FS1. Wisconsin is blazing hot. See if John Mobley can give it a go for Ohio State. Ohio State also lost Noel for the rest of the season, I believe, or maybe just out indefinitely. But Ohio State has to have it. And bad news for Ohio State, you win this game, which you might not. It's only a quad 2 game. Wisconsin is 33rd in the net right now. I don't know if Ohio State has a path to, they definitely have a path being in the Big Ten. But after this game, I mean, will they have enough to be inside the tournament? I don't think so, even if they were to win this game. But if you lose this game, hurts even more. 8:30 on Peacock, UCLA at number 10, Michigan State. UCLA gets drilled pretty much every time they have to go anywhere east. Michigan State is favored by 9 in that matchup. I expect Michigan State to drop probably to like 13 or so in the AP poll. 9 o'clock, Big Ten Network, number 7, Nebraska at Iowa. Will Nebraska be in the top 10? I don't know. I probably doubt it. Iowa coming off that blowout loss. This is a much better matchup for Iowa than Purdue was. Just because Nebraska doesn't kill you with overloading talent. They're very cohesive, very smart, very well coached, as is Iowa. So they have a little bit of this should be a little bit of a chess match. Nebraska favored by 1 on the road. 9 o'clock, ESPN, Georgia. Don't lose too many, but this is a tough spot at number 25, Kentucky. I don't know if Kentucky will be ranked after losing to Florida. Kentucky's favored by 7. Georgia, it's like this isn't a game you're expected to win, but if you do get this win, really, really would boost you as in terms to getting an at-large berth. And then finally at 11 o'clock, ESPN2, number 16, Texas Tech, who might be top 10 after that win, maybe. At Arizona State, this is kind of like just kind of keep an eye on it. Just maybe a little bit of a hangover game for Texas Tech beating Arizona. You're still out west. You play Arizona State, who's like actually got some decent talent. I'll say about Arizona State, I've kind of talked a lot about Bobby Hurley just in the offseason episodes because I've expected him to not be the coach there for a while. I've kind of come around to really like Bobby Hurley. I kind of, I know it's not going well at Arizona State, but I've kind of really turned to like him. So we'll see if he has a couple last minute hurrahs for maybe keeping his job. But I would doubt it, but it's kind of just to keep an eye on a game. Could it be a hangover game for Texas Tech? And then on Wednesday, we have another good slate. Number 21, Arkansas at Alabama. I think Alabama will probably be ranked. Alabama's favored by 3 at home in that one, 7 o'clock ESPN. We get LeBaron Philon and Aiden Holloway. Aiden Holloway's awesome, by the way, like really, really awesome. Versus Darius Acuff, who is probably your front runner for SEC Player of the Year. Can Philon shut him down with his speed? We'll see. 7 o'clock ESPN2, Oklahoma at Tennessee. Tennessee favored by 11. Might also be ranked, but we'll see. 7 o'clock TNT, Creighton at number 6, UConn. UConn favored by 16 in that one. 9 o'clock ESPN, number 22, BYU at number, what will probably be 3, I'm guessing, maybe 4. Arizona. Arizona's favored by 12 in that one. I think this is a get-right game for them. It's just going to be a tough spot for BYU without Richie Saunders. 9 o'clock SEC Network, number 19, Vanderbilt at Missouri. Missouri, you got a chance. You got to get this one done, in my opinion. They're a 6-point underdog at home, but this is your one. You win this game, you probably have a good chance of being an NCAA tournament team. Vanderbilt continuing to climb these seed lines. If they win this game at Missouri, quad 1 win, you might be looking at Vanderbilt towards a 3 seed. They're closer than you might think. 9 o'clock ESPN2, Auburn, who it's like, be careful. I still think they're fine, but you don't want to go to 5-8 in the SEC with a loss at Mississippi State. Auburn's favored by 4 on the road, but Mississippi State, they're scrappy. They're not good, but they're scrappy. 9 o'clock on Peacock, number 9, Kansas at Oklahoma State. Like I said, Oklahoma State would probably be like my 9th team out right now. Not dead, not in good position, though. Kansas favored by 7 on the road in that one, looking for a rebound. 9 o'clock on TNT, number 17, St. John's at Marquette. Game doesn't mean near as much as you might have thought at the beginning of the season. St. John's favored by 9. 9 o'clock, Big Ten Network, number 8, Illinois at USC. USC, last 4 bye team. You have an opportunity here. Can you get it done? Can Elijah Arenas carry them? I think they're going to keep it close. I would take USC plus 8. But we'll see. Can Keaton Wagler just continue his tear? Mirkovich been playing very good basketball as well. 10:30 FS1, Boise State at Utah State. Utah State's favored by 10. Utah State and San Diego State are tied atop the Mountain West standings right now. Boise State is not dead for an at-large. They're not in good shape. In fact, I don't even know if they have a chance just playing in the Mountain West. However, if there's a game that you can get that can boost you, it's at Utah State. This is your best team in the Mountain West is Utah State. Boise State with an opportunity. I just think Utah State's too good. Jared Calhoun, by the way, in terms of just coaching carousel stuff and everything I've just kind of inferred and thought about, I will be very shocked if Jared Calhoun is at Utah State this year. So if you're the Utah State value Jared Calhoun right now, he's a fantastic coach. I will be very shocked if Jared Calhoun is not at Ohio State or Cincinnati next season. He's a Midwest guy, was at Youngstown State. He grew up in East Liverpool. I would expect him to be either the Cincinnati or Ohio State head basketball coach next season. Up next, 11 o'clock, ESPN2, number 12, Gonzaga at San Francisco. Gonzaga favored by 15. San Francisco, disappointing season for San Francisco. I thought this team was going to be really good this year. They're not that great. Alrighty, we kept it under an hour. Very good. I'm trying to get these shorter. I just can't. There's just been so much to talk about. Thursday's show will definitely be shorter. It's just going to be, a review of this week. We'll talk about those I believe we'll have 2 top 10 matchups as long as Purdue's inside the top 10. Then Thursday, we have some really good mid-major games. So we're going to talk about those games on Thursday on our Thursday show. And then Friday is good, I believe. Yeah, we have Indiana and Purdue on Friday. And then Saturday, it's Michigan and Duke, which for the second time this season, this has got to be a thing. I'm not a huge, researcher for stuff like this. I like just stat stuff. This has got to be the first time ever that, as long as Michigan and Duke are still, which Michigan will be there. I'm not sure if Duke will be there. Arizona could catch them. That Michigan would play 2 games by the top 2 teams in the country at KenPom, via KenPom. They played, remember that game against Gonzaga early in the season? Those were your top 2 teams in the country via your most used computer algorithm. Michigan and Duke would be top 2 right now, yet again. See if Arizona can climb up there, but then we have Arizona and Houston, who is 3-4 at KenPom. Then Iowa State, who we have, is actually number 7 at KenPom right now, surprising to me. A little lower than I might have thought at BYU, who's 22nd. So Saturday is stacked. We're going to talk about that. And then, of course, come back Friday for our live bracketology show answering questions. I'm going to have my official prediction there of the top 16 seeds that are going to be revealed on Saturday via the selection committee. So be sure to come back for that. I would like to answer all questions, whether it's about, I'm going to try and not talk about like the individual games on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Try and leave those questions on like Thursday show if possible. And then on Friday, I would like to talk, bracketology stuff. Can this team win the SEC with their path? I'll have all the schedules pulled up. It'll be a big live show. So be sure to come back for that. I would love to interact with everyone. I'll of course shout you out, mention who's asking the question, and we'll talk about just talk college hoops and bracketology more specifically. All righty, that'll do it for the show today. I'm done yapping away. Please subscribe to the show and while you're here. Follow us on Instagram at Bracket Science with 2 S's. We'll post that bubble graphic tonight. If you would like to see it again, we're going to post some more just rankings stuff like KenPom rankings, team sheet stuff over the next week. So be sure to come back for that. Enjoy this week of hoops. Enjoy Iowa State and Houston tonight. Enjoy Purdue and Michigan tomorrow. We'll talk to you again on Thursday. Till then, take care.